Good afternoon. My name is Andre Parada, a corporate attorney with the Cannabis Legal Group here in Royal Oak, Michigan. Today I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Mallory Nisu. Mallory is a new attorney at the firm. She's also a new attorney, a newly licensed attorney in the state of Michigan. And today's topic will focus on a specialty type of license that is issued by the state, specifically a temporary marijuana event license. With COVID restrictions statewide hopefully easing, and soon to be lifted across the state, we've received many inquiries from potential clients as well as current clients regarding their likelihood of putting on these type of events where cannabis can either be consumed or sold at a physical location in compliance with both state and municipal law. So we feel this is a very pertinent topic, and we hope that you'll find it informative and hope that you'll consult with and potentially even hire the Cannabis Legal Group for all your temporary event licensing needs and requirements. So to give a little bit of background, as Mallory knows as well, temporary event licenses fall under, as I mentioned, what's called a specialty license type in the state of Michigan. Specialty meaning because it differs, of course, from a retail license, a processor license, or one of the three types of cultivating licenses, Class A, Class B, or Class C grows. A specialty license, it means exactly what it says. It's not one of those original true substantive licenses. But in order to even apply for and host a temporary marijuana event, an entity or individual must apply for and obtain a marijuana event organizer license. So this discussion today will focus on the application process of the event organizer license, which is a prerequisite to apply for and obtain a temporary event license. So just like the more traditional license types, for specialty licenses, there is a $6,000 application fee, and you submit the application to the state, just like a state step one for a more traditional license. The state has to approve the license, and then the event organizer has to then approach a city that is opted in to allow these types of events. So ideally, we're going to see hopefully soon more cities come on board online and allow for these types of temporary event licenses to be distributed in their cities and then be hosted by these companies in their cities. But the reality is, as of now, these specialty licenses, while allowed on the state level, some municipalities, most municipalities in fact, have indeed opted out. For whatever reasons, right, they may be less than welcoming to events that are going to be consuming or even selling cannabis out in the open, even though it's a controlled environment like we'll discuss. But for whatever reason, we hope to see those barriers knocked down over time, and hopefully sooner rather than later, where more of these municipalities will come on board and allow these temporary event licenses to be issued and then the events themselves to be held. Just like more cities are coming on board and allowing various other types of substantive licenses, growers, processors, and the like. So I mentioned the $6,000 application fee. Again, that's on the state level. Once you do receive state approval, the specialty license, temporary marijuana event, is treated just like the regular license type. In other words, there's a local application that's required. And the requirement there is meant by having the city or municipality opt in, and the application has to be completed in compliance with the local laws and regulations. Part of those applications, part of the requirements in some of the cities that have opted in require pretty detailed applications. They require a site plan, essentially. So it's not a building, of course. These are events. You think of Hash Bash at the University of Michigan campus. These are events that are held outdoor. I mentioned at the beginning, since COVID restrictions are easing or seemingly easing across the state, more people, especially clients, have told us they want to get away from the Zoom type stuff and want to gather in groups in person. And what a better way to do it than to potentially even distribute some of your product or sell some of your product or coordinate with other licensed or retailers to sell their products at your event. But again, in order to host an event, you need to be classified and you need to be licensed as an event organizer. When you apply for that and the state grants the event organizer license, that is valid for 1 year. If you get to the year and you don't host an event, you just reapply, you renew your license for $1,000. But again, the event organizer license is the prerequisite in order to host a temporary event. And the temporary event is really going to be specific to the municipality that's opted in and then meeting those requirements as well. I mentioned not necessarily a floor plan, but it's a layout essentially of the event. The exits and entrances have to be clearly marked to ensure that only allowed participants are in the event. Namely, the allowed participants are people aged 21 and up, of course, to meet the state law requirements. Now, people ask, are you required to consume or required to sell at a temporary event license? The answer, of course, is no. You're allowed to do that, but you're not required. So ostensibly, you would want to consume the product or even invite retailers to come in and sell their product. But if you are sampling products or giving samples and not actually doing true sales, bear in mind that the requirements for transfers that are not considered sales are still in play. So the requirements for sample sizes and the amounts that you can offer as samples to individual consumers will also come into play in that regard. But most of the time, these events are held for the purposes of consuming cannabis on site and also inviting retailers to come in and sell their product as well. So the responsibility, though, in terms of organizing everything, attracting and contracting with retailers potentially to offer their product there, the security of the event itself, and the disposal of any product that's consumed on site, that ultimate responsibility is borne by the licensee, the license holder of the marijuana event. So the license holder of both the temporary event and also the overall event organizer licensee bears those responsibilities in terms of providing security, ensuring that only individuals age 21 and up are at the event, and then of course ensuring that any and all waste is disposed of in accordance with all regulatory requirements. So these are called specialty licenses, of course, like I mentioned, because they differ from the more traditional licenses. These events can be held for as little as 1 day, and they can be held for as long as 7 days. You can't go longer than 7 days. If you wish to go longer than that, the state considers it a successive event, and you have to apply for another temporary event license as well. And so again, with the COVID restrictions easing, I know we're headed into the fall, but we still will have some nice weather. And then, of course, as we get into springtime and next summer, it's something to keep in mind that, again, we're going to see more cities come online and opt in to allow these events. So it's something to keep in mind. It's not as simple as just getting local approval. There is both a state process and a local municipal application process and various rules and regulations that will need to be complied with in order to have an event and to build your brand, essentially attract other potential retailers and grow their brand, and really just have a great event to celebrate either your license or just an event in general. So
that's great information, Andre. So you mentioned there was a $6,000 application fee.
Yep.
So is there an additional licensing fee for the event?
That's a great question. So you're right. There is a $6,000 application fee just to throw in your application at the state level, just like for any license. And then there is a $1,000 licensing fee. So when you do get your license granted, it's granted in exchange for the license fee. Then at the event specifically, there is a daily fee. Remember, the event can only be held between 1 and 7 days. If there is going to be sale of cannabis, whether you're selling it, whether you're a retailer license and you apply for an additional temporary use or temporary event license, or whether you just hold the event organizer license and you invite other licensed retailers, if there is going to be cannabis sold, to answer your question, there is an additional $500 per licensed retailer who is invited and selling their cannabis. If cannabis is not being sold, in addition to the $1,000 license fee, there is a $500 per day of event fee if no cannabis is being sold and it's just either being consumed or there's no consumption at all. So it's a great question.
So that's good to know. Now, are there any residency restrictions to apply for a specialty license?
Great question. So there are some residency restrictions for some of the other more traditional substantive licenses. For example, a micro business now, you have to be a Michigan resident in order to apply. That requirement is not going to be there in a couple years. But to answer your question specifically, there are no restrictions. In other words, you can be an out-of-state company or an entity and apply for an event organizer license and then apply to host a temporary event itself.
Okay, that's great. So that leads me to another question.
Sure.
So say, for example, I wanted to, say, host an event next month. Are there any timing requirements that I should be aware of? Great
question. In fact, I'm glad you asked specifically next month, because we in fact have a lot of clients and even potential clients who call us and ask, hey, I have this, I know a city that's opted in, I know an area specifically within the city where I plan to host the event. Can I do it next month? We would want to work with you at this point, obviously, and we'd be excited for you, but under state law, it's a great question. Under state law, state regulations require that The application for the state, recall that there's also a local application, but the state application has to be submitted to the MRA no later than 90 days before the first day of your event. So unfortunately, if you wanted to hold it next month, that's a little too quick. Not for our purposes. We'd love to get that license quickly, but the state will just reject your application because, again, it needs to be in no later than 90 days prior to the first day. But those are all great questions.
Thank you.
So to wrap it up, we feel that these specialty licenses are only going to grow in nature because more cities are gonna come online. We presume over the next several weeks and months. My name again is Andre Parada, a corporate attorney here at the Cannabis Legal Group in Royal Oak, Michigan. Please check out our website for more information about these specialty types of licenses and other licenses as well that we assist our clients with at cannabis-legalgroup.com.
And I'm Mallory Nisu, new attorney here at Cannabis Legal Group. Thank you for tuning in.